What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live once again for Liam's first look. This week, we're talking about UFC Vegas 77 and coming down off the high that was UFC 290. It was an exceptionally good card, a lot of fun action, pay-per-view, main event. Not much more that you can ask for than the pound for pound number one, getting it done again, showing up in form. So, did not cash our Yair Rodriguez main event ticket, but just got to take a tip of the cap to the GOAT, Alexander Volkanovski, showing up and doing the damn thing. But what did we say on this show last week? Thought that it was going to be a requirement that one of those big underdogs burst through on the main card. That's exactly what we got. Dricus du Plessis ends up getting us the winning evening that we were looking for. That's 3 winning events in a row on the show. Very thrilled about that. Should be 4 in a row if our guy Dan Argueta was able to get across the finish line the week before, ended up getting a push there. So basically, we've had good events, 4 events in a row. And so we're never going to let our highs get us too high. We're never going to let our lows get us too low. We've been keeping it consistent. We've been keeping it, pretty low volume, picking our spots, trying to find good plus money angles to attack and hoping for the best each and every week. So thank you to the 16 people rocking with us live. Appreciate everybody who's checking this out. We do have a headlining fight here in the women's division between Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter, former UFC champion, and Mayra Bueno Silva. Very interesting fight to kick things off. We're going to talk about the main event. But guys, I just want to make a note about this show for people that are new here. If you guys are just checking out the show for the first time, my first look, I come to you guys before I go over all my tape study, before I go through all my notes, before I finish my research process. And this is before I get any influence, before anybody gets, to really get in my ear about these fights. I get to come up with my independent analysis. I get to put some thoughts on paper and talk through these fights with you, give you guys a glimpse into the process, how I approach these fights theoretically. And from there, I come back to you guys on Thursday. I do the bets and banter stream. I bring on great guests. I already got one planned for this week that I'm very excited to talk to as well. So I'm seeing great friends of the show already in the comment section. I'm seeing a lot of people drop their thoughts. We're going to interact with your thoughts as we go here, but just want to let you guys know up front exactly what to expect from the show. And with that being said, let's get started with the main event of the evening. Holly Holm and Mayra Bueno Silva, 2 girls that are looking to take that next step forward to a title shot. We've got a fairly wide open women's bantamweight division, do we not? We just had Amanda Nunes retire on top with the belt. So now what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter, looking to get one more title shot. How old is she? Let's pull up the Tapology right now, folks. 41 years of age, 8 months. In addition to that. So she is closer to 42 than 41 years of age. We know that sometimes the aging out doesn't happen as quickly in the women's divisions as it does in the male divisions. However, at 42 years of age, we got to start asking those questions. Robbie Lawler was able to turn back the clock and get the big win over the weekend, but that's very infrequent, especially in retirement type scenarios. So the question is, how committed is Holly Holm? How many more fights does she have left? And is she going to be able to pull it off here against Mayra? And I think that Mayra offers, an interesting challenge here, to tell you the truth, guys. When I think about this fight, the first thing that comes to mind to me is this not another really dangerous grappler for Holly Holm to deal with? Who has she struggled with in the past? Let's take a look at Holly Holm's resume and who she's lost to in the UFC. So we had Holly Holm lose to Ketlen Vieira. I bet Ketlen Vieira in that fight. I thought that Ketlen Vieira won that fight. I know that I took a lot of grief for that. I understand it was a close fight. It was a close decision, but I thought that Ketlen Vieira did the more effective work. I thought she landed the more damaging shots. And I also thought that she almost popped her head off with a freaking choke at one point in that fight. So I really felt like it was a great showing from Ketlen Vieira there, and kind of a regression to the mean a little bit from Holly Holm. I felt like she's been doing well against other girls that are a little bit older, that like to strike at distance, or that she could out grapple, that she could out physical, that she's more dominant than. And I think she's going to have a really hard time doing that against Mayra Bueno Silva. She may have some physical advantages, but I don't think she has a safety net with the takedowns here like she has in a lot of these other fights. I don't think she has a safety net here with the clinch, because I think that the grappling of Mayra Bueno Silva is something to really reckon with here. Let's talk about who else has beaten her in the past. Amanda Nunes was able to head kick her and take her out with punches on the ground. Shout out to everybody who's saying drop a like on this video. Appreciate if you do. If you guys are new here, go ahead and get subscribed to the channel. Talking through UFC fights each and every week, trying to give you guys all the best angles to pursue, and also information that you can use to make an informed decision, right? If you guys want to take in more information, if you guys want to do your own research, that's what I would always encourage. But if I can help you get to, a better process, if I can help you guys understand what kind of thought process goes into winning gambling, that's what I'm here to try and help do. And so we're going to continue to dig through this content, right? Let's talk about how I approached this card. I went through and I tried to write down where I expected the odds to be, without looking at the odds prior. So what I had down for the Holly Holm fight, Holly Holm 55% is what I expect the market to price this out at. I think Holly Holm gets a ton of respect in the market. She's going to be the much older fighter here, but she's got better experience. She's fought the better girls. However, you look at Mayra Shitara, it's not like she's been fighting cans in her recent performances. And let me stress why I think her recent experience has been interesting. So she goes out there and she gets the win over Lena Landsberg via knee bar. And that doesn't tell you much because Lena Landsberg doesn't have a great record. But the last time that she was finished in the UFC was in 2017 by Aspen Ladd. And the only other finish loss that she had in her whole career was against Chris Cyborg in 2016, according to Tapology. So when you're looking at Lena Landsberg, she's a tough girl, very hard to finish. And Mayra Shitara was able to submit her. And it looks like she was the only person to ever submit her. She had been ground and pound finished before. So it's not like she hadn't lost on the ground before, but she got finished for the first time. Let's look at some other work. Stephanie Egger. I mean, guys, Stephanie Egger, if you guys aren't aware, she grappled at the ADCC. Yes, it was a little bit of that phantom armbar. Couldn't really see it clearly on the video, but overall, she put her in a lot of danger, probably had that fight as good as finished. I mean, if you're tapping somebody like Stephanie Egger, with all due respect, I feel like you could tap somebody like Holly Holm. So I do think Holly Holm is extremely tough, but I definitely think, to my guy Robot Chicken, his point, he says if Tate can tap Holm, MBS more than live to get a sub. I agree. Here's something else though, guys. Why is she not live to get a ground and pound finish here as well? Holly Holm normally has the advantage, where she's able to get on top. What if Mayra's able to hurt her on the feet? What if Mayra's able to get on top? I say if anybody ever has the dominant positions to get a sub, then it's very possible for them to get a TKO as well. I think that's a little less likely here because I do think that in WMMA, there's oftentimes more opportunity, more equity for the bottom side submission, that armbar from guard, for example. But I do think that in this fight, Mayra, to Jay Call's point in the chat, says Mayra has some heavy hands. I tend to agree with that as well. So I really think that this is a lot of interesting information here, right? I feel like when I look at the Mayra Bueno Silva side, I'm a little bit more tempted towards the underdog in this fight than the favorite, right? I'm asked to lay it at -150 here, more than I expected even the market to price this at for the Holly Holm side. I bet 6 units on Ketlen Vieira +210. I thought it was a completely ridiculous price. I also bet in that fight, guys, 1.18 units on Ketlen Vieira by sub. And I know it didn't cash. I know I didn't get the money, but that would have been 10 units in my pocket if instead of just turning purple, Holly Holm had actually tapped there. And she was very close to doing so. So when you see those kind of examples, that seems to me a little bit like writing on the wall potentially. And, I don't think that Holly Holm has a great record against Brazilians in the UFC. Let's take a look. Holly Holm's record against Brazilians in the UFC. She got beat by Ketlen Vieira. She got smoked by Amanda Nunes, smoked by Chris Cyborg. She beat Petchko Hea. And that's the sample size. So yeah, not very good, honestly. So I think the younger girl who's bringing in that Brazilian supplementation, who's getting in a lot of good work, who's been having a bunch of tough fights recently, I feel like she's going to compete here. So according to my guy Lucrative, who I just did some content with, he said that he knows some sharp players that are looking at the home side. God bless him for it. I hope this line keeps going up. It's going to be a dog or pass situation for me pretty clearly here on the main event. And I know if you guys watch the show a lot, you may be thinking to yourself, man, this guy picks dogs more often than a lot of other people. Yes. And I also am willing to take those shots, but not every time, right? And in this case, I'm actually picking the dog outright. I think Mayra Bueno Silva can win this fight, and I think it should be lined a lot closer. So for me, probably going to look at this dog shot here and hope for the best, but no bets on the fight yet. And it's a good one. It should be an interesting enough fight. Should it be a main event? No. Should be a co-main event here. But I think they're really trying to establish a title contender here. And I truly believe the UFC went all in for the last card. And so all the good fights that they're going to have for the next 2 weeks, they already happened already, right? So now it's just whatever's left. And I think that in this case, this is a decent enough chance. So shout out to our guy, Nigel Lee, in the chat as well. Says he took Lipsky. People called me dumb. I bet Lawler got ridiculed. Getting my third dog this week. Best of luck, brother. Love to hear that. Keep the confidence going. And I think that you're something that really inspires, right? You got to trust your gut in this game, guys. Don't only listen to my research, but you got to feel it. You got to believe in these bets yourself and do the research. Take the time. Go back and check my work. Make sure that you agree. But for me, again, I just can't see myself getting there with a 41-year-old Holly Holm in this fight. I don't think I could back her at the window. So for me, it's a clear dog or pass. Let's talk about this next fight of the night. And this is a really fascinating one, guys. We'll talk about the betting odds for all these fights and just introduce them so you guys have a good perspective as well. So right now, we are at the 11:03 mark. I have a pen handy. Let's see. Now you guys are getting a look into the inside process here as I look for a pen to carry us forward in the show. Brutality. Do I have one handy? Doesn't look like it. All right. F it. We'll go back and do the timestamps after. I tried to get ahead of the game. Couldn't do it. We'll do it next time. But for this fight, okay, what I had written down prior to looking at the lines, okay? And again, I'll be changing my mind about some of this stuff as I do my research, but let's just talk about it off the rip, right? Because this is my first look. So my first look, I put down Albert Duraev, 65% was what I expected this market to be. And instead, we're looking at Jun Young Park, minus 172 on FanDuel, plus 134, the comeback on Albert Duraev. So I expected Duraev to open up a favorite here. Duraev's looked hit and miss in the UFC, no doubt about it, right? But when you look at the body of work, I think that overall, most of the fights he's had have aged okay. Let's talk about the one that's a real glaring, terrible look for him. He goes in against Joaquin Buckley, and he got smoked, right? Former training partner came in way, way too overconfident, over-aggressive in that fight. And I think that, what we saw from Joaquin Buckley there, he was very motivated. He wanted that win. He stuffed the takedowns. He did a good job. He kept it upright. And from there, he really just landed good shots on the feet, closed up the eye of Duraev. Duraev's cardio has looked a touch suspect in the UFC. And that's the part that I get why, people are a little bit skeptical of him. But let's talk about why I think, this is a guy who's an interesting underdog here. It first came to mind when I just thought to myself, who is the kind of guy that beats Jun Young Park? Let's look at his record. He's 16-5 overall. Let's look at the guys who have beat Jun Young Park. Gregory Rodriguez knocks out Jun Young Park. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez submits Jun Young Park. Shavkat Rakhmonov submits Jun Young Park, and then he lost back in 2015 twice on the regional scene. So what does that tell us about Jun Young Park? Well, he lost to Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, what do you take away from that? That's a great loss to have on your resume, right? No sweat off your nose there. No looking down on that. But he got submitted there in the second round, okay? He also was submitted in the second round by Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. And if you guys watch that fight, he was doing a great job wrestling, grappling early in that fight. And he started to tire out. And Fluffy Hernandez does not tire out, guys. He keeps bringing that pace. He keeps enforcing an insane pace rate on you unless he's killed. So when I look at a fight like this, I say to myself, Jun Young Park, he's a very talented guy. But where is his best skill set? It's on the ground. He's a very good grappler. So the guys that have beaten him so far in his career are all better grapplers than he is, right? And when you look, Shavkat Rakhmonov is a better grappler than Jun Young Park. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, better grappler than Jun Young Park. Gregory Hobocop Rodriguez, better grappler than Jun Young Park. I bet 6 units on Jun Young Park against Eric Anders because I was confident he was going to be the way better grappler. I thought he would have the better pace. I thought he would have the better shots on the feet. Guys, he barely won that fight. It was a close split decision. And I realized the physical limitations of Jun Young Park at this weight class. That's the reason why his grappling doesn't translate against other good grapplers. When he's going against the John Phillips of the division, the gassing out Tafon and Chukwues of the division, the Marc-Andre Barrios, who are very good with the cardio, but not very good with the fighting, overall. So when you look at those kind of guys, he will beat them. Joseph Holmes, who's not on his level in grappling, he beat him easily. Dennis Talulian, who's a guy that is a good striker, not a good grappler, he beat him. Jin Young Park can beat you if he can out-grapple you. But if he can't, he has a very hard time. And I think in this fight, he will have a very, very hard time out-grappling Albert Duraev. I don't think either one of them has a massive cardio edge. I think that Jin Young Park is definitely the better conditioned athlete, but I think he could take damage in this fight on the feet. I don't trust his decision-making at all times inside the octagon, and I would be a little bit surprised if he had his way with Albert Duraev in the first round. I think that Duraev in this fight is a dangerous grappler. He's come through as a dog before in the UFC as well. I've had a good track record as well with this fighter. So let me bring up my past bets on Albert Duraev because he's been one of my best reads in the UFC lately. I bet 3 units on Caio Bittencourt against him on the Contender Series because he hadn't been very active. He was coming in with a couple finished losses from Russia. And guys, he ripped through Caio Bittencourt like he was no big deal. And Caio Bittencourt comes from a grappling background, had a lot of good stuff, in my opinion, on his regional scene. And he got wiped away like he was nothing. So I think Duraev came in on insane sauce. I think he might have cycled off the sauce a little bit and, tried to get his feet wet in the UFC. He had the very difficult fight against Kopylov, who's another Russian cat who knows how to grapple, who, by the way, has been looking aces. Since Duraev beat him in that fight, Kopylov's been looking great. He's gotten a lot more experience under his belt. He beat the shit out of Punahele Soriano. Then you look, the Chidi and Njokuani fight, he was a dog, I believe, in that fight against Chidi. Let me pull up the odds there. Chidi and Njokuani, minus 195, plus 150 on Duraev. Yep. So my betting record for this guy, I bet Duraev against Kopylov. I bet Buckley against Duraev. Buckley shouldn't have been plus 195 against Duraev. That's too aggressive. But again, why is Duraev not at worst a pick 'em price here? This is a guy who came in as a massive favorite against Kopylov. And, Kopylov, I feel like, is a trickier fight for him than this fight against Jin Young Park. Jin Young Park has gotten banged out on the feet. He's gotten outworked and submitted on the ground. And I don't think he deserves to be this big a favorite against somebody like Duraev. So I agree with Rick the Ruler that he's maybe not on the same level as those guys, but I do think that what we've seen from the Iron Turtle is he struggles when other guys can really compete with him in the grappling range. And God's honest truth, I think Duraev can compete with him, if not outwork him and beat him in the grappling range. So Duraev's not a prize, right? He's not a guy where I didn't feel great when I laid that big price against Kopylov, right? But he still cashed me the bet. That was 5.22 units at minus 260. He was minus 260 against Kopylov. And, now he's like a similar price as he was against Chidi when he won on the moneyline underdog. I don't know. I just feel like this is another dog or pass spot. I've been on Jin Young Park as a significant chalk favorite, and he's made me sweat my ass off, including that Eric Anders fight. So for me, this is a fight where I would favor Duraev, probably outright. So again, just seems like a clear dog or pass for me. I think Jin Young Park's a great fighter too. I like Jin Young Park. Let me go back and look at my record betting Jin Young Park. Cause like I said, I bet him hugely against Eric Anders. Jin Young Park, I have never lost a bet on Jin Young Park. Funny enough, I didn't even know that before the stream started. I bet Jin Young Park 1.2 units at plus 120 against Tafon and Chukwi. I bet Hobo Cop at minus 108 against Jin Young Park. And I bet Jin Young Park for 6 units at minus 200 against Eric Anders. 5.44 units of profit on Jin Young Park on the money line. I bet Gregory Rodriguez ITD at plus 260. So I have made 6 units profit betting on this guy, and I do not think he's going to win over the weekend, personally. So that's my humble opinion. Next up, folks, let's see it. Walt Harris and Josh Parisian. I hate this fight. Tell you the God's honest truth. I have no interest in betting on this fight. That is my opinion here, folks. So I'll tell you that right off the rip. From a betting standpoint, this is a fight that I want to stay far the hell away from if I can. Shout out to the chat. A lot of great comments here. Our guy Justin says, howdy, Liam. Hey, chat. What's up, Justin? Welcome aboard. Shout out to Austin as well. Says he agrees with what I said. Sometimes Duraev just decides not to have success and shoot first. Yeah, man, I think he's got to do a good job coming out here with a smart game plan. shout out to our guy Nigel Lee, asks a very pertinent question. Says, Liam, do you think this might be a spot to take Duraev with the plus 3.5? I think that, that might not be a bad look here. I do think Duraev, the one problem I have is when he gets hurt, when he gets battered, sometimes he can close up shop, he can get finished. So that's my only danger factor there. Maybe sacrificing that plus money on the EV doesn't make sense, but it's something I'd have to think about a little bit more. Great question, Nigel. Big Bird, our guy Pierre says, no big ticket on Walt Harris. No big ticket for me, brother. We got Walt Harris, another one of these fighters coming in here at 40 years of age. However, he is in the heavyweight division. So he's definitely in a division that's a lot more forgiving of the older fighters. And he's taking on Josh Parisian, who I have described before affectionately as a big, tall glass of milk. Now, when we look at somebody like Josh Parisian, I don't think he's a very good fighter, but I've also been terrible at betting on his fights. So I'll always come clean with you guys. When I think I'm good at getting a read on somebody, I'll let you know. When I think I'm bad at getting a read on somebody, I'll let you know. Josh Parisian, if he wins, I bet against it. Like if he won the fight, I bet against him. If he lost the fight, I bet on him. Like it's just impeccable. Go throughout his stuff. I think that Nigel Lee is really summarizing here why I don't want to bet Walt Harris. He's 40 years of age. He has not won since 2019. He's not beating very credible fighters most of the time when he's out there. But when I lined this fight, I said to myself, I expected Walt Harris would be a favorite in this fight, despite the fact that he's older, because he has beaten better guys. He projects a little bit higher athletically, and he's got more finishing upside in the early going. However, the ABCs, they always bet on cardio, and Walt Harris has horrendous cardio, and I do not trust it personally at this point in his career. So shout out to everybody that's got conviction here. Shout out to my guy, Big Bird, if you've got a big ticket on the big ticket. But for me, it's going to be nothing. Maybe an under here. I must have missed it, but I watched Park whole UFC career. He turns the back every grappling exchange. Weird fight. Dude, I think you're so spot on here, Pierce. I was pointing out that my read is I think Jin Young Park has only lost to better grapplers in his career, and I think he's probably going against a better grappler again this weekend. So, yeah, I think it's a really tough fight for Jin Young Park. Shout out to Shane. Shane766 says, this fight is yikes all the way. Walt is the definition of a one-round glass cannon. I tend to agree, man. Shout out to SD Crusader, says, garbage cards equal dog heaven. Looking for my third week of going dog heavy. I like it. You know me. I'm always looking for the underdog, always trying to make a case for them. I think you could make a case for Parisian here, but certainly he's not going to be seeing my dollars this weekend. So I think Walt Harris, round one is probably when he's going to get it done, if he gets it done. And we wish him the best of luck, obviously. He's a very likable character. Next up, folks, we've got a women's featherweight fight. Don't know exactly what this means. Don't know what this is for, but we've got Norma Dumont, Storm and Norma Dumont taking on Chelsea Chandler here. And, when I put down my pre-fight line here, and if you guys see me looking over to the side, I just have it all down on this piece of paper here. Nothing too special, but just wrote down what I expected the lines to be here for all these fights before I looked at them. And I thought Chelsea Chandler here would be a minus 125 favorite. I think that coming off that last win, thought that was going to get her some plaudits, some credibility in the market. I felt like people were going to start to rally around her a little bit because she really beat the brakes off Julija Stoliarenko, who's a lot more experienced than her, who is, a pretty strong girl with decent grappling in her own right. But obviously Stoliarenko just doesn't have great striking defense. She doesn't have great durability. So a couple of things that favored Chandler there that made her look really good. She's still a very inexperienced fighter. Storm and Norma is going to have double the experience here as a professional, but 4-1 in the Invicta promotion, that's not a bad place to be getting your regional experience in when you're a women's MMA fighter. I think that that's a good sign for Chelsea Chandler. And then on the other hand, Storm and Norma Dumont, she's got a loss to Macy Chiasson in the UFC. That's a little bit scary. She's got a loss to Megan Anderson in the UFC. That's a little bit scary. The wins, Carol Hossa, who has been showing up looking a little bit, underwhelming, I would say, in her last 5-6 UFC fights, just hasn't really been doing it for me. Danielle Wolf, another extremely inexperienced girl, beat Aspen Ladd in a fight where Aspen Ladd didn't attempt to fight or win or do anything of note or substance. She beat Felicia Spencer by split decision, retired fighter. She beat Ashley Evans Smith, a fight that means nothing to me. So what do I take away from that? I feel like Norma's got a lot of experience under her belt. She's done a lot of things right. But I also feel like this is not a fight where she's, head and shoulders above her opponent here. If Chelsea Chandler is able to get takedowns, get this fight to the mat, I think that could be where she has some opportunities. Her opponent here in Norma Dumont, I believe, is a BJJ brown belt, if my opinion or if my memory serves. And also, Norma does not throw very high volume at all, guys. I looked at UFC stats. I believe she's peaking at like 60 strikes in most of her fights. And I think in her last fight, this girl, Chelsea Chandler, threw more than that in the first round when she finished this girl. So for me, I think the activity level, I think the aggression level from Chelsea Chandler is going to be there. So unless she gets cold cocked and knocked out here, I actually kind of favor Chelsea Chandler to do more work as this goes on. Shout out to our guy, Robot Chicken Wings, with the sharp read here. Says Norma cardio looks kind of weak. Tend to agree. So for me, let's look at what the odds currently are on the fight. That's the one thing. I've been telling you guys what my odds are, but let's talk about what the odds are overall as well. So Holly Holm, you're looking at a -150 to a +125 or a +130 for Bueno Silva. For this Chelsea Chandler fight, Chelsea Chandler is currently a +125 underdog compared to a -141 favorite for Norma Dumont. So you're getting plus money on the comeback here with Chelsea Chandler. That would be the side I would take. So I've advocated an underdog in 3 of the first 4 fights on this card, but that's truly how I feel in terms of whether I was betting it from a money line standpoint. Obviously, haven't gotten to the window with these yet, but just letting you guys know which direction I would lean. These are directional, picks for me here, but again, I do feel pretty strongly about all of these ones where I had written down, I thought that Chelsea Chandler would be favored. She's a dog of the same price. I thought that Walt Harris would be a favorite, but I thought it would be a small favorite. He's a much bigger favorite than I expected. I thought that, sorry, I'm looking for the main event. I thought that Holly Holm would be a slight favorite. She's a bigger favorite than I expected. So overall, we've just seen a little bit of dissension. I thought Albert Duraev would be, a 60% favorite or more. And instead, Jin Young Park is favored to the same degree. So this is why writing things down before you look at the odds can be very beneficial to your process, right? Because you could see when you have a glaring disagreement with the market and then investigate it and say, am I right or is the market right here? Sometimes you're overlooking something, but sometimes, you're onto something that the market hasn't caught up to yet. So something that I'm going to be looking at here. Shout out to SD Crusader. Says he's all over Chandler here at +125. Tend to agree. Says Norma doesn't have any finishing equity, bad volume and cardio. Yeah, I thought if she is ever going to finish, it would be Aspen Ladd. And I think she may have even dropped her there if my memory serves, but Norma is just not a very purposeful finisher. She doesn't really go for a lot of offense. If Norma misses weight by half a pound or 2, I'm backing Chandler. Dumont money line steady going up. At what point do we back Chelsea Chandler? That's a hard question because I believe this line is actually flip-flopped throughout the week. So I think there may be a little bit of push and pull here. I think there may be a tug of war, but a lot of people are going to back the experience here of Norma Dumont. I do believe that. Next up, guys, let's talk about it. Let's take a sip of the coffee. Let's shout out to the people in chat. We got a lot of great people rocking with us live, 50 people. God bless each and every one of you guys. Thank you for spending some time with me here. It is July 11th. It is 12:30 or so in the East, and we are just getting started, guys. We still got 2 more fights to break down on this main card. So without further ado, let's kick it to the lightweight division where our next 2 fights will be held. We got Ottman, Azaitar, what's in the bag, brother, taking on Francisco Prado, the pride of Argentina, if you will. International flavor to this fight, guys. We got 2 guys that are coming in to the Apex Center from out of town, and they're going to be looking to make a statement, for Francisco Prado, came into the UFC in his debut fight last time, lost a unanimous decision on short notice to Jamie Mullarkey, all but ending his undefeated run, 10-fight win streak, cut to a inglorious end there, and then Jamie Mullarkey tried to make that quick turnaround, and what happened to him? He got blasted the hell out of there. So unfortunate result there for Ottman Azaitar. His last fight, he got absolutely sent to the land of wind and ghosts by New York's own, baby, Matt Steamroller Frivola. The New York boys will teach you how to wrestle, and that Matt Frivola right hand will teach you how to box, son. So overall, had to just put on for our New York guys there for a second. But what we've seen from Azaitar is, frankly, he has 2 of the most useless wins in the UFC. And I don't say that to discredit their skill. I just say it because they're tailor-made opponents for a guy like Ottman Azaitar. How does he win fights? He wins fights by coming out there, blasting somebody in the face with big power shots in the early going. And I even think that the UFC thought to themselves, Matt Frevola fits the bill, right? He got knocked out by Terrance McKinney, so we could send him out there. And then what happened? Matt Frevola, he's got better, well-rounded skills, and he's actually better on the feet. So when everybody's yelling, oh, Matt's got to take him down, he's got to do this, he blasted him the hell on out of there. What a performance by Matt Frevola, and he is now a ranked fighter in the UFC. So no skin off his nose there. But the win over Kama Worthy has one of the worst chins in MMA, in modern MMA. You just got to say that. Teemu Packalén, I believe, only got highlight reeled in the UFC. Let me just pull that up. Teemu Packalén got absolutely flatlined by Mark Diakese and by Ottman Azaitar in bad ways. So I do not think that Teemu is a really high-level guy. He has not fought since he lost that fight. So this, for me, is a fight where I'm probably going to be looking ever so slightly towards the Prado side here, guys. He's 21 years of age. It's a virtual pick'em fight. And I feel like Prado, he had heart to the point of our guy, Robot Chicken Wings here, but he also had, 15 minutes of cardio, and Azaitar doesn't have that. So I think that ABCs say always bet on cardio. I would definitely be leaning towards, the other side here. So let me pull up my notes. What did I have on this fight? I had Francisco Prado minus 125 in my notes. Let's take a look. Oh, you know what? I actually have this lined exactly how the market does. So the market has this lined minus 125 Prado. I agree. I definitely think that if I was to get to a side here, it would probably be the favorite. If everything checks out, if he covers all the things I'd need him to cover on paper here. But I think he's got the better cardio. I don't think he's a massive grappling, liability here against Azaitar. And I don't think that the UFC loves Azaitar, to tell you the truth, after that whole incident where they almost had to shit can him. But I think they have to keep him around and give him honest competitions because he's got some influence and some power. So I think this is a honest fight where either guy could win, but Prado's going to have a big reach advantage, a big size advantage, a big youth advantage, and it's not a significant price. I'm going to lean towards the favorite here. So, not just a dog guy, not just going to sell you on every dog. But if I think they have a chance, I will tell you the God's honest truth. And if I don't, I will tell you the God's honest truth. I think he has a chance. I just would lean towards Prado here, and I think he's probably the value side as well. Next up, Terrance McKinney and Nazim Sadykhov. This is a really tricky one for me, guys. I was able to, put out a little bit of reach, a little bit of feelers, try and ask around a little bit about this fight. Shout out to former friend of the show, still friend of the show, but he was on here before. Our guy, geez Louise, what's happening to me? I need a sip of coffee here. Saeed Yakub. Our guy Saeed Yakub Kakramanov, guys. He came on the show. He's a teammate of Terrance McKinney. He says that Terrance has been putting in an insane amount of work for this fight. Says that he's showing up ready and in great shape. So those are things that you definitely want to hear when you've got a big matchup and a big opponent on a main card. They're going to be kicking off the main card here. And we know Terrance McKinney, big all-action type of fighter, guys. He's a guy that brings the heat. And he's a guy that really wants to compete, wants to be out there, wants to be in those highlight reel type situations. I didn't like what we saw from Terrance McKinney in his last fight. He went out there against Ismail Bonfim and he got cleaned up. But I'll tell you what, guys, that was exactly how I expected that fight to go. That was truly, truly exactly how I expected that fight to go. So when I called Bonfim, I bet Bonfim in that fight. I bet him by knockout, and I called the round 2. So I felt like Bonfim was going to outlast him at a decent clip. But, Bonfim is not the killer that he's made out to be. He's a great fighter, but he's not just like blowing everybody out of the water. Terrance really didn't fight his best there. So Terrance has a lot to prove here. The Eric Gonzalez fight, he went out there and showed his grappling, his class in that position. I think that when he has a grappling edge, he can be really dangerous. Think about the Fares Ziam fight. The Matt Frevola fight doesn't really tell me much, except that he's got big power in his hands. He almost knocked out Drew Dober, who's got a great chin. And then Matt Frevola finished the job for New York. You know what I'm saying? But when we're talking about this fight, we're talking about a guy in Terrance McKinney who's very talented, but he is a pretty front-loaded guy. So on the other side, let's take a look at Nazim Sadykhov. Nazim Sadykhov did get submitted in the first round in his only professional loss in 2018. I'll tell you one other thing. This was told to me a long time ago, and this could have changed drastically, right? So all training room stories should be taken with a grain of salt. But somebody that trained with Nazim had told me back in the day that he did not think Nazim was a UFC level grappler, and he thought eventually he would get exposed. This is the kind of fight where you could get exposed if you're not ready to grapple at the UFC level. And I think that when we look at this kind of fight, we got to take note of the fact that Terrance McKinney invites a lot of variance. He invites a lot of violence. Nazim Sadykhov is a guy that brings punching power, that's got some takedown defense. Shout out to our guy, Take No Prisoners, says, told you, Liam, Robbie Lawler KO and Menafield to win. Remember, I don't truthfully, but I believe that you were there. I remember the name. So God bless you for it. Good stuff. Didn't really end up taking those fights as like my zone in spots of the week, but that's why there's so many spots on the card, guys. There's so many fights. So if you got a really strong read on one fight, dig in there, work your way there, figure out exactly how you want to attack it. But I had 4 bets on the last fight card, and I was very tight with my action, right? Less than 1.5 units exposure. So one win on the night on Dricus du Plessis is enough to get me across the finish line. I have a very particular betting strategy. I wish everybody the best, though. And that's why we talk about every fight on the card. We try and dig into every fight on the card. But everybody's going to pick different ones that they want to zone in on for their own bets, for their own reads. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So shout out to you. I'm glad you cashed, brother. And I hope you cash again this week, no matter what you take. Shout out to our guy, MMA Triple J, one of the sharpest out there, guys. If you're not following, correct that mistake on Twitter. Very, very sharp guy. Somebody you should be learning from. You can find him on betmma.tips as well. Very, very sharp. So shout out to the sharpest chat in the game, full of great people commenting, dropping notes, information. Appreciate all you guys. If you guys have more commentary, go ahead and drop that as we go. Let's think back, though. Nazim Sadykhov, right? Coming off a win, right? Coming off a very good win streak. But let's talk about it. He fought the Ahmad Hassansada guy, got the really easy win there. Didn't really take a ton away from that, except that he's got punching power. That's something that we should take into this fight as well. I definitely lean towards the under here. I think both these guys have a clear path to finish. I think Nazim can win this fight by knockout. I think Terrance can win this fight by knockout. He's got big power as well. But also we've got, the fact that Terrance McKinney in the early going is a dangerous grappler, right? And he can hop on people's back. He can be very opportunistic. He can get good takedowns. Even the fight that he lost back in the day against, what's his name? The guy who I think kind of stinks at 145, but he's super tall, Sean Woodson, right? Sean Woodson, he took him down like multiple times. And then as soon as they got back to the feet, he got flying knee there. Terrance is a guy that fights with a lot of panic and a lot of, anxiety. But against a guy like Nazim, you don't really want to let the fight keep playing out for too long, right? Evan Elder ended up getting the fight stopped there in a fight where he was having some success because he took some damage and the doctor ended up calling it off. Nazim throws with a lot of power, and it seems like he can keep that kind of steady Eddie pace where even if he slows down just a little bit, he can keep throwing. He can keep throwing with enough power to get guys respect. So I feel like for Terrance, he's got to get this done early. He's got to close the show in the early going, or he's got to wrestle the whole fight. And I haven't seen evidence he could do that. So I think it's got to be front-loaded win conditions for Terrance McKinney. I think Terrance McKinney by sub in rounds 1 and 2 would be interesting ways to attack this if you're on the McKinney side, because I think those are his best chances to win. But I do think there's a good chance he could get knocked out here. I will probably be looking at the under, seeing what that is priced at by fight time, but I haven't seen any odds on that yet. So fascinating, though. I think that Nazim is definitely somebody that the UFC is taking a look at, but I want to see him pass some grappling tests before I feel fully convicted on what to expect from him moving forward. Next up, guys, we have the prelim headliner. So before we kick into the prelims, just want to say to everybody watching live with us, you guys have been asking in the comment section frequently, and I want to address it now on the show as well. People say, hey, Liam, I know that this is a first look. Where do you post your final reads? Where do you post your bets? Where do you post your information as you develop it throughout the week? That is all available in multiple places. It's all in the description box below. Easiest ways to find it is on Patreon and the Lab VIP. I have hundreds of profiles, 400 plus fighter profiles from UFC fighters on upcoming cards, these cards that we're talking about this week, but also cards that just transpired. I had 17 pages of notes on Volkanovski, for example. So I have tons of different notes. I create documents each week for the UFC. If you're interested in any of that information, you guys can hit me up on social media at LiamPicksFights. And again, more information in the description box below. So without further ado, let's get back to the action. Let's talk about these prelim fights. And we've got a lot of great stuff to dig into, starting with Tucker Lutz and Melsik Baghdasaryan. Our guy Tucker Lutz has his back up to the wall in this one, right? 0-2 on his UFC contract, got finished in brutal fashion in his last opportunity, right? So that was tough. That was a bad look for him against Daniel Pineda, but Pineda so much more experience, so much more veteran savvy, more experience in the UFC, more experience as a pro, way more grappling credentials. And Tucker Lutz was a huge favorite going into that fight. So I felt like he was too wide as a favorite, but he was much younger. I thought he would have the better pace, the better cardio. It wasn't to be. He got beat up. He got owned a little bit by Daniel Pineda. He had some success in that fight. He landed some shots, but Pineda just was the grittier guy with more savvy, more ways to win, and he got it done. This is maybe the first time in the UFC, though, that Tucker Lutz is not at a grappling disadvantage. Let's look at Tucker Lutz's last two opponents, okay? He fought Daniel Pineda, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, extremely dangerous submission grappler, tons of wins by submission, inside the distance hunter. Then he fought Pat Sabatini, wrestling All-American, guy who has real Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu elite credentials as a black belt. It's two guys that if you come from Ground Control Academy in Maryland, you're probably going to have a really hard time beating, right? I think that that's tough. I think that those are the kind of things where, you know, they've given him really tough assignments so far. And Melsik, he's not an easy assignment at all. Melsik is a dangerous striker. The Gun, he's a great nickname, right? Comes out, throws all these big bombs, big shots. But what happens if the fight gets extended? Melsik starts to get tired a little bit. He starts running on fumes a little bit. He starts throwing with a little less intensity. He starts giving his opponents opportunities to get back into the fight. Let's look at who Melsik fought. Okay, he's 7-2 as a pro. He beat Bruno Souza, sketchy win. He beat Colin, and by the way, it was by decision. He beat Colin Anglin, really bad win in hindsight. Just didn't age very well at all. Dennis Bazooka, the Dennis Bazooka of today would whoop the Dennis Bazooka that he fought in 2020's ass. Okay, so all that being said, this is a guy who's had a bunch of canceled fights, who is not that active in the UFC, who is not winning that many high-level fights, and he just got finished in his last fight by Josh Kulabau. And by the way, I've had to hear so much grief about Josh Kulabau. I didn't even bet him in his last fight, but I bet this man at plus 400 against Charles Jourdain back in the day, and I said to people, this guy's not as bad as he's made out to be. So I don't even hold that loss against Melsik too heavily, but I do think when you look at Josh Kulabau having success against Melsik enough on the feet in round 2 that he was able to get that submission, I feel like to myself, this is a line, where I would expect the public, and this is, again, me trying to introduce what I think the line's going to be. I thought the public would be minus 230 Melsik. The public is just about minus 230 on the Melsik side. Let's pull it up. Minus 190 is best available. Minus 225 in Betway. So Melsik Baghdasaryan definitely getting a lot of love at the betting window this weekend. Understandably so. He does have a lot of big power on the feet, but he went to decision with Bruno Souza and got finished by Josh Kulabau. And you're telling me he's 65+% to win this fight here? It's a big ask for me. That's a really big ask. I think Tucker Lutz, he's a lay and pray guy. He's not a huge finisher. But he did lay and pray on Sherrard Blackledge, and that was a decent enough win for him on the Contender Series. Fought two good grapplers since. Maybe he goes and surprises people here with some recency bias. So for me, I think Rick the Ruler might be onto something here. Line feels off to me, not buying the Melsik hype. Tend to agree, brother. Rick the Ruler says, bro, I'm telling you, Nazim, an action fighter, can get KO'd for real, hangs out in the pocket too much. So we've got a little bit of dissenting opinions here because our guy Robot Chicken Wing says he has to fade Terrance, but I think the chat's onto a lot of the right angles here. I think both guys liable to get KO'd. I think both guys young, capable of making mistakes. But Terrance McKinney's more experienced at the UFC level as a professional, and I've heard from, reliable sources that he put in a great camp for this fight. So wishing him the very best here. And shout out to friend of the show, Saeed Yukub Kakramanov, for a little bit of that, gem. Nick says, hey, Liam, serious question. Of all those books behind you, which was the most impactful read? Which one would you recommend the most? So I think if you are new to sports betting and you guys want to get better, or if you are a mixed martial arts purist, but you really want to understand the betting game beyond just mixed martial arts, this book right here Simple book, The Logic of Sports Betting. What is it? Less than 250 pages, guys. Broken down for you how bookmakers come up with odds, how the mathematics behind all of it works, what the vigorous is, what a synthetic hold is. If you don't understand some of the principles in here, you could be really smart about mixed martial arts and find a way to lose money. And that's unfortunate, right? So betting is a skill, and understanding and analyzing mixed martial arts is a skill. And I think that for me, this book is the best conceptual, simple understanding you can get of a basic, comprehensive approach to sports betting. So this, for all my sports betting homies out there, great pickup, great read. Let's look over here. If you want to understand mixed martial arts, this one right here, The Fighter's Mind by Sam Sheridan. Not just mixed martial arts athletes, keep in mind, Dan Gables of the world, Marcelo Garcias of the world, elite combat athletes, what makes them tick, why they got to be as good as they are. This will really give you an insight as well. If you want to understand who's going to be a champion in this sport, look at people that fit the same bill as the champions, the great champions that have come before them. A lot of great stuff here. So I appreciate the question, and I want to be doing more. I wrote something down the other day about getting more content to you guys about, cultural stuff, right? We come here and we talk about the fights and stuff that happens on a week-to-week basis, and I love that. But I also want to put some content out there that lives a little bit longer, and things like talking about some of these MMA books out there. Are they worth buying? Are they a piece of shit? Because the other thing is, I don't want you guys to waste money on something that I already wasted money on. If I think it's a piece of shit book and you agree with me, God bless, or whatever. But just want to have those conversations, because I feel like, there's a lot of content about betting out there, and I think I do a great job, and I love betting, but I also love the sport. And I do like talking about combat sports in general. And sometimes you can talk about really cool, interesting ideas when you talk about these books. So I appreciate you bringing it up and asking, my man. And anytime you guys have questions about books, about media, about whatever it is, you guys can go ahead and throw that in either the comment section or the live chat. Happy to talk about it as we roll through the show. So thank you guys so much. And shout out to our guy, Nick Alexander, says Tucker Lutz is a bum. I know he looks that way, brother. If he goes 0-3 in the UFC, it'll be hard to argue otherwise. But I'll tell you what, he impressed me on his rise up through the ranks, and I do think he has some chance. I don't think he's as bad as people think that he is. So we're going to find out this weekend. But Top Control Academies, or Ground Control Academies, Tucker Lutz, Top Gun, looking to come in here and make something of himself. He is the younger fighter. He is at a slight reach advantage as well. So best of luck to Tucker Lutz, but he's got his hands full. Melsik is a scary guy, does throw with a lot of power, but I think if he can extend him in this fight, I think he's going to look like the value side. Next up, very interesting fight here in the women's division, because Istela Nunes, was able to kind of lay out a little bit of that blueprint for D Gomes, right? She goes out there, she gets the knockdown. She's having some success. She's winning some minutes against Yasmin Jauregui. And guys, I was dead wrong about Yasmin Jauregui. So if you bet the Gomes side, God bless you for it. I thought that Jauregui was going to get the win there. I thought that she was going to probably have to deal with a little bit of a tough round 1, but I thought she would come on strong in rounds 2 and 3. Guys, the fight didn't get extended. She got absolutely blasted. So I'll always take it on the chin, right or wrong. But in this case, Istela Nunes did show in that fight that she has some power in her hands, and she let it go. She just wasn't able to keep it consistent and fight for the full 15 minutes. So for me, I had to favor Dudakova here in this fight, because I saw her fight for the full 15 minutes in her last outing. So for me, when I was writing down my pre-odds here, I said Dudakova 65 to 70% was where I expected the market to be sitting. Then we peek over at the best fight odds screen right now, and we've got minus 222, best available price on Dudakova. So basically, the more bullish version of my handicap is where the market is at minimum. And then you can see all the way up to, I think, minus 300s on the board. Let me just check if I'm out to lunch here. Minus 275s, it's as high as. So when I'm looking at that, I say to myself, that's very bullish for a WMMA debutante, right? Shout out to our guy, MMA Triple J. Again, a very sharp person that I pointed out in the chat before says took some Nunes plus 190. I think that that's understandable here. And we're seeing some Nunes love start to come in, some respect, and the lines start to show that, start to come back in her direction. Let's talk about the why behind this fight, right? Let's talk about why the UFC put this matchup together. Well, Dudakova, they got to find out exactly what they've got. Silva had won on UFC before, but she was boring and she didn't come in with enough skills. So they said, get some more regional experience, come back and do it again. She did it again and she lost to Dudakova. So now Dudakova's in the UFC. But did they really want Dudakova, or is she just a girl that found her way to the UFC? She's 24 years of age. She's on a 12-fight win streak, never lost in mixed martial arts, so she looks very good. But who has she really beaten? Her best win is Maria Silva, who doesn't look like she's going to be a UFC level fighter at this stage. And she could get there, but has struggled to this point to distinguish herself among her peers. But then you look at Istela Nunes, right? She's lost 4 of her last 5 fights. Looks absolutely terrible coming in here, except that she's training at the Nunes gym. That she's training with American Top Team. That Istela Nunes has been trying to get better, and she's fought the much higher level competition. Yasmin Waregi, Sam Hughes, Ariane Carolosi, and Angela Lee are all high-level fighters relative to somebody like Dudakova, who's never fought somebody like that you're aware of. So for me, all those kind of things make me think this is a dog or pass situation, but it's probably a pass situation for me ultimately, unless we see this line go over 2-1. Because the truth is, I don't feel inspired by Istela Nunes. I do think she has bad cardio. The ABCs do say always bet on cardio, but I do think it's value. And I think that MMA Triple J is making a great point here. If I expected that the top end of my cap here would be, about a 70% indication for what the market could hold, then I just can't get to this favorite price no matter what. And this is the purest point here. He's making the points before I could even get to him. So shout out to our guy Triple J, just on the money today. Says Dudakova plus 250 in Contender Series. Now she's minus 300. Super overcorrection. Every Contender Series winner gets a lot of respect at the betting window when they come to the UFC, and I think that she's got to earn that respect at the betting window. I do think she should be favored here, but I do not think she should be favored more than 65%. So for me, it's got to be a dog or pass situation, and I'll wait and see how this plays out a little bit. Because I do think there's going to be more love that comes in on Dudakova. Russian girl, undefeated, shows a lot of the right things, Contender Series. Very interesting. Next up, guys, we've got a fairly mid-level fight here between Austin Lingo and Melquizael. Somebody can correct me. I don't know how I'm doing there. Melquizael Costa. That's what we'll call it. Melquizael Costa. This is a really difficult one to project out because on the one hand, you've got Costa. He's a younger fighter. He's got way more experience. I like to see that. And he's got the 3-inch reach advantage. So a couple things that I would potentially like. Austin Lingo, I want to say I bet him in his last fight. So let me pull up my previous bets on betmma.tips. I believe I bet Austin Lingo against our guy, Nate Landwehr. Yes, I did. So I have bet Austin Lingo, guys, against Jacob Kilburn, and he got the win there. I bet him 1 unit at plus 100 against Luis Saldana, and I bet him 1 unit at plus 200 against Nate the Train Landwehr. And he had some success against Nate, but Nate was able to take over, pace him, put too much on him in the end, and he tired out. I think that Lingo, there was a couple problems there. He took that one on short notice, I believe. Let me pull this back up, the Austin Lingo record here. I believe he had a cancellation right before that. He had 3 cancellations in a row, as a matter of fact. Lingo was injured for a scheduled bout with Jonathan Pierce. He withdrew from a bout with David Onama, and he had a bout with Ricardo Ramos scheduled for the 11th of March, and then Ramos missed weight, guys. So then he comes in against Nate Landwehr 2 weeks later, cut to weight again, and he had a absolutely disastrous performance there down the stretch where he ends up getting submitted by Nate Landwehr. He ends up getting broken by the pace in that spot. But prior to that, he had lost to Yusuf Zalal. He's 2-2 in the UFC, so a 500 UFC fighter, not too shabby. And he's still very young, right? Let's look at Austin Lingo, 29 years of age. Now he is getting a second camp in a row after coming back from injury. So I think we're going to see a better product from here, than what we saw in his last fight. Costa came out in his last fight. He was submitted in round 2 by Thiago Moises. Tell you the truth, guys, Thiago Moises is a hammer in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu department. Since he's been working with Grant Dawson, his wrestling's been looking a little bit better as well. A lot of interesting stuff here about the Costa side, but Costa is a guy that's lost many times throughout his career. He's lost to a lot of regional level opponents as well. So I don't think that he's a guy that's lights out. I think he's a guy that can come in and get a win here, but he's going to have to fight for it. I would be curious to see what the odds are in this matchup because my notes had this 50-50, guys. I literally wrote down Costa 50%, Lingo 50%. I expected around a minus 110 here. So we are looking at a plus 180 on the Austin Lingo side. Yeah, it would definitely have to be a dog or pass situation for me, given that consideration. I expected a 50-50 here. I do think Costa, with some of his natural intangibles here, slightly younger, more experience, a little bit longer reach, I could potentially see him being a minus 125, minus 135 here, but it just seems way too aggressive. For a guy who's 0-1 in the UFC, got submitted in his first fight out against a guy who's 2-2 in the UFC, who's putting it together and who had some success against a fringe, ranked guy in his last fight. So yeah, I think I have to agree with my guy Furio here. He likes Lingo plus 175, plus 180 seems like a good bet. I tend to agree. Love it, love it, love it. So with that being said, guys, we can move along here to the next fight. But if the tape checks out for me, I think I will have to be riding with Austin Lingo once again because he's done well for me at the betting window, and now I'm getting a nice price. Genaro Valdez taking on Evan Elder. This is a fun fight at 155, guys. Evan Elder looked like he was on his way to finally getting that UFC win, potentially, against Nazim Sadykhov. He was competing and ended up taking too much damage there, gets stopped late in the fight. Let's see where that was. Round 3, doctor's stoppage due to a cut above his eye. So they end up getting the fight of the night bonus there. Evan Elder gets the, conversation with the UFC. All good stuff. He got beat up by Preston Parsons at 170. Preston Parsons is big. He exerted his body weight. He was way too big for Evan Elder. And I had bet Elder in that spot. I thought that was a good spot for Elder. Let's look at if I bet him against Sadykhov. I do not believe that I did. But I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn here because I definitely bet Evan Elder when he lost. That was annoying. Here it is. Evan Elder against Preston Parsons. 1.5 units at plus 140, and Evan Elder got smoked. That was on super short notice, and I don't think it was that close in the end. I do not remember the scorecards, to tell you the truth, but I just remember it not being close in my own view. I thought that Parsons, had opportunities to finish there, but Elder was just really tough and stayed in the fight, made sure he didn't quit on himself. He showed a lot of toughness there. Same thing in the last fight against Nazim. He didn't want out of that fight at all, but ended up getting stopped. I think that this is a very winnable fight for Evan Elder. I think that what we've seen from Genaro Valdez is poor risk management in the UFC. Against Matt Frivola, he was dropped multiple times on the feet. I don't remember the scorecards for the Sadykhov fight, but I do believe Elder was winning on the scorecards. So let me look scorecards, Elder, Sadykhov, and see if we can find anything. Official scorecards here. Yep. I just pulled it up on UFC.com. Let's see what they've got. Shout out to my guy Temba Garimbo, got the win that night. The absolute homie there. Where is it here? Evan Elder, Nazim Sadykhov. Evan Elder was up 20-18 on all 3 judges' scorecards when that fight was stopped, guys. So the judges had him up 2-0 on all 3 judges' scorecards prior to the stoppage against Sadykhov. And I think that Evan Elder is a good fighter. I bet him at plus 140 in his UFC debut. I took a wait and see approach against Sadykhov. And now I think that against Genaro Valdez, he's going to get the win. I predicted Evan Elder would be a 70% favorite in this fight. Looking at the odds right now, Evan Elder is about a 75% favorite. So a little bit more bullish the market is than I am here. But I think that the favorite is the side here. So I will not be taking the dog shot. I think that Evan Elder is probably going to win this fight. And if I had to guess, I think he's going to do it by knockout. Next up, guys. Next up. Let's see. We've got 3 fights left, and we've got 70 people rocking with us live in the chat. So I want to make a personal request to each and every one of you guys that are rocking with us live right now. If you could drop a like on this video, would mean the world to me. I really appreciate it. Staying with you guys, 1 a.m. Eastern local time here, trying to give you guys my first look. And I appreciate everybody that shows love and support. So with that being said, we got Tyson Nam taking on Azat Maxim in the 125-pound division. Flyweight just put on a show in that championship fight over the weekend. What can they produce in this fight on the prelims on Saturday night? 16-0, Azat Maxim making his UFC debut. Another Kazakhstan hammer looking to make his way into the octagon. This man rattled off 8 wins in the Octagon organization. He also has some wins in Brave as well. 2 wins via finish in the Brave organization. So this is a guy who's putting it all together. He doesn't have the greatest wins in the world, but does seem like a guy who's being brought in with a lot of fanfare, as you were on this UFC Fight Night card. Tyson Nam, on the other hand, guy with a ton of experience, way more experience than his opponent here, but he's 39 years of age. He is coming off of a Bruno Silva submission loss due to rear naked choke. He was hurt in that fight as well. He was rocked on the feet by Bruno Silva. So I felt like Tyson Nam, the writing is starting to be on the wall. He's a dangerous fighter. He's got great hands, but I do think his chin is starting to go. I don't know that his cardio can hold up for the full 15 minutes at 39 in this weight class. So a couple things to be wary of. That being said, he did knock out Ode Osborne 1 fight before, and he lost a split decision to Matt Schnell. So he's not a bad fighter by any means, but he is a guy that is getting older and does definitely have some signs of miles on the tank. So the wins over Zaruk Adashev and Jerome Rivera really don't mean much. The Ode Osborne win was a nice, knockout, but again, it's not really super comprehensive. Doesn't show what he could do if a fight gets extended. Shout out to Furia. Once again, he agrees with me here. It says Elder KO plus 125, ITD minus 160 seem like they could be good looks. I agree. So does MMA Triple J. Says I think could be a good look for Elder ITD. So I would tend to agree. I do think that Valdez is a guy that has a lot of fun fights, and he brings the style that you want to see, a lot of aggression. But I just think that he's just very open to being hit, and when you fight like that, you pay the price oftentimes in the UFC. Jimmy the Drunk says that Ode KO was nice, but kind of fluky. And I tend to agree, man. I think that Tyson Nam will live off that for a little bit longer, but when the UFC is giving you the 16-0 Kazakh guy, that's normally not a good sign. That's normally a polite get the hell out of here. So let's see what happens this weekend. Wishing him the very best. He's put on a lot of great fights for the UFC, a lot of fun, but he's certainly got his hands full as far as I'm concerned this weekend. Looks like they may have just reordered the Fight Night card. I just refreshed, and now Tucker Lutz and Melsik Baghdasaryan looks like it's going to be the opener of the night. So, guys, by the time you're watching this could be all messed up in terms of where the time scale is in relation to Tapology, but I'll have timestamps so you can clearly find every fight broken down on this card. As far as I'm concerned, though, guys, the fights that I have yet to talk about is Carl Deaton III and Alex Munoz, as well as Ashley Evans Smith and Island Perez. The other fight that was just announced, and I've done no research on at all, is Jack Della and Basil Hafez. So we'll close with that discussion as well. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to everybody rocking with us in the chat. Go ahead and fire away if you guys have bets, comments, concerns, questions, anything that you want to get off your chest. As we dig into the next breakdown here, at 155 pounds, we got Carl Deaton III taking on Alex Munoz. Alex Munoz, guys, has been extremely inactive. I looked at his resume before. His last scheduled fight was 2021 in May. He had Herbert Burns withdraw from a scheduled bout. He lost a split decision to Luis Pena. He lost a unanimous decision to Nasrat Hakparas, and he pulled out of a fight with Luis Pena. So that has been his run since beating Nick Newell on the Contender Series, all right? This guy, Alex Munoz, has not fought, period. He just hasn't been active. I do not know what to make of this guy. He's got a couple decent wins. The Troy Lamson win's okay. The Nick Newell win's okay. Good fighters, but just a guy who's been so inactive, I really know nothing about what to expect from him here. So overall, guys, I had to favor Carl Deaton here, 55%, based on nothing except that Carl Deaton's been actually fighting. He's He's been out there. He's been more active. So let's take a look at Carl Deaton, who, by the way, has way more experience as well. It looks like about 3 times the experience. He got submitted by Joe Solecki in his last fight, but they call him Joe Gracie, not for no reason. He's very talented on the ground. He's got good wrestling. He's showing up in better form for these fights recently. So I feel like that was a good showing from Solecki. No skin off his nose. Has a win over Justin James, former UFC fighter. And he's fought a couple guys, Jonas Flock, Alejandro Flores, to close decisions, right? He's a very tough guy. He's hard to put away. He got beat by Abel Cullum back in the day via submission, got put out by Mike Hernandez in 2013, but the guy's been around forever. He's a vet of the game, fought a lot of good guys, went to a no contest 5 rounds with Chepe Mariscal, beat Nate Williams twice. So this is a guy who has real wins outside the UFC. He's been fighting tough guys. I think Carl Deaton is the side here in all likelihood. Let's take a look at the line. Holy shit, Carl Deaton's an underdog. That surprises me. So again, this has got to be a dogger pass for me, guys. This guy's been way more active. He has had 1, 2, 3, 4 MMA fights since Alex Munoz has been in the cage, and Alex Munoz is favored. I mean, that seems very bullish to me. It really does. Also, Alex Munoz losing to Luis Pena and Nasrat Haqparast is a worse look than losing to Joe Solecki, in my view. So give me Deaton. Second to last, but certainly not least, Ashley Evans Smith against Ailin Perez. Weirdly bullish take for me here, guys, but I just think Ashley Evans Smith is no good. She's 36 years of age. She is 1-4 in her last 5 fights. So not been looking good recently. She lost to Norma Dumont in 2020, guys. She has not fought since 2020 as a professional, okay? This is a setup fight, in my humble opinion. This is a she had a canceled bout with Molly McCann, setup fight. Had a canceled fight with Talia Santos, setup fight. Lost to Andrea Lee, which was a setup fight, not for her, but for Andrea Lee. She had a canceled bout with Lauren Murphy, setup fight. She had a canceled bout with Antonina Shevchenko, setup fight. She beat Beck Rawlings, who is one of the worst fighters in the UFC's women's history, with love and respect, right? She's a fun girl, all that stuff. No bad things to say about her. She's terrible for MMA purposes. I don't think she had a good record at all in the UFC. She lost to Sarah Moras in the UFC by armbar. You might be saying to yourself, who the hell is Sarah Moras? She's terrible. Ketlin Vieira beat her. She's just not good. Ashley Evans Smith isn't good. I don't think she was ever good. I think she's a tough girl. She's been around a long time, fought a lot of tough girls. I think Ailin Perez is going to run through her. I think Ailin Perez is being set up for success. I think Ailin Perez, I played her, frankly, against Stephanie Egger, and I know I looked like an asshole when she got beat there, but I beat the market by a very wide margin in that spot, and I felt like overall she was, a potential play. I feel like she had some UFC jitters. She let herself down a little bit there, but this is a girl that the UFC has been trying to get a win, in my opinion. Couple Argentinian young talents on this card. Ailin Perez, Francisco Prado. Anybody else notice that? I know I did. So couple things that I'm going to be looking at here. Going to make sure I do my due diligence, make sure the camp went according to plan. But I think this is a clear setup. So for me, I had Ailin Perez 70% written down. And she is not being priced that aggressively in the market. So let's see. 80 people rocking with us live. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. Our guy, Rick the Ruler, says straight up pass for him. He thinks Perez is a fraud. And on the fade list, I do not think that that's true, but we'll see, man. We'll see. I truly think that Ashley Evans Smith is here for a paycheck. And I don't say that about everybody. And maybe she comes out here and wins the fight. But when you haven't fought since 2020 and you take this fight, it's because you're doing the JOB for the UFC, in my humble opinion. So that's how I feel about it. Let's talk last but not least here. Truthfully, this is really the last one, guys. So any questions, comments, and concerns, this is the time to fire them off. Let me have them. And if I don't get to them now, no problem. Make sure you go ahead and drop those in the comment section below. I went through, and if I missed you guys prior to the fights, I went back and I responded to every single comment on the last 2 videos. So appreciate you guys for the comments. I am very diligent, in my humble opinion, about trying to go through and respond to all those because it means the world to me. So thank you guys. But here we go, guys. The main card will be rounded out by Jack Della Maddalena taking on Basil Hafez from Pennsylvania. So I'll tell you what, I have said many times before, them New York boys will teach you how to wrestle. Pennsylvania boys will teach you how to wrestle, no doubt about it. They are goddamn good at wrestling in the state of Pennsylvania. Very, very talented. Shout out to our guy 28AV. This is why we love to talk about the sharpest chat in the game. He says Hafez trains at elevation with Kamaru Usman and Gaethje, has legit power, highly skilled BJJ black belt. He's never been finished too, not even in amateurs. He may not beat JDM, but I will be hammering the over. Fair play, my man. I think that's a bold, bullish take. Fury FC welterweight champion, also former CFFC welterweight champion. Very impressive credentials coming in here. I did notice when I looked at Hafez's resume briefly before that he should be a similar size to Jack Della, so he's not going to be undersized like so many of these other guys. To your point, he has 1 win by knockout, 4 wins by submission, never been finished. He's 3-3 in his career to the decision. So maybe some questions about his cardio. However, he's lost 2 split decisions. They were to Richard Williams and Evan Cutts. He avenged the Evan Cutts loss by finish. So this is definitely a talented guy. He went to decision, and it was a draw, a split draw, as a matter of fact, against Jeremiah Wells when they were both 3-1 in the CFFC. CFFC is one of the best promotions to come out of, period, point blank, in terms of winning percentages in the UFC. So I think that Beast Coast, East Coast is going to send a good representative here. I'm going to have to take a look at Basil Hafez and see exactly what he's got to offer. I think the way you beat Jack Della Maddalena is on the ground. I think you need to submit this man. I think you need to take him down. We've seen evidence that he can be, taken to the ground. We've seen evidence that he can be put in vulnerable, compromised positions. See the Angelusa fight. However, we've seen that Jack Della can change your face within 5 minutes. We've seen that he can land fast, effective combinations from a good distance, and that he knows how to pick his shots very well on the feet. So he's a murderous puncher. He is not to be trifled with. He could be the first man to finish Hafez, but Hafez is probably going to come in here with big disrespect. Why? Because he's coming in on short notice. Why? Because he's coming in against JDM, and because JDM was just a massive favorite in his last fight that was booked. Oftentimes, we see the bookmaker use the same line and run it out again. Waregi was a big favorite in her last couple of fights, and then she was a big favorite again, and it all blew up, right? So I think that they try and establish patterns. Jack Della, going to be a big favorite in all these fights, but are you going to be riding at the time when it loses? That's the question. I don't know if he's going to lose here. I don't think so, but I will say this. Is it harder to prepare for a fight and then go in there, or is it a fight where, when you get to this fight, you say, wow, this isn't a guy I prepared for. This is a guy that I had a 1-week turnaround. This is a guy that I have to make sure I figure out a way to win this fight, because nobody knows who he is. So it's a high pressure situation in some ways. JDM should win this fight. He should be favored to win this fight. But I also think, we might get a disrespectful price here on the underdog. So now is the time, guys. It's early in the week. I'm going to start digging in. I'm going to start doing my research. I'm going to start finding out whether or not there's value to be had on this kind of line, because I think that, this is a fight where bookmakers are going to be forced to shade away from Jack Della action. They're going to want to not write too many Jack Della tickets, but they know going in that they're going to write a bunch of them. So how do they manage it? And I think that they're going to try and manage it in this case by making it a really high, unplayable type money line, force you into parlays, and force you to grab a couple other legs on this card, which is a very, very awkward card, right? There's not a ton of proven commodities. There's not a ton of favorites here that are lights out and win every time. All these kind of things where I would say prudence on this card will be conservative strategy, will be multiple outs, will be picking your spots. Do you really want to trust the major chalk on this card? Let's go through and look at the biggest favorites on this fight card, okay? So right now, Azat Maxim is minus 400. He's a UFC debutant, though he is 16-0. Viktoriya Dudakova, minus 230, best available price. She is a UFC debutant. She's 6-0 as a professional. And she is the second biggest favorite on the card, I believe. No, that would be Evan Elder, who's 0-2 in the UFC. So, guys, again, I can make a case for the favorites on this card. I can make a case for the dogs. But when we're looking at this fight card as a whole, I think if you're betting more favorites than underdogs on this fight card, you could win your bets. I just think over the long term, making those kind of bets is going to be tough, because you look at this fight card, there's not much reliable fighters here from a chalk perspective. So I would say picking the 1 or 2 or 3 underdogs that you like, picking the props that you like, picking the totals that you like would be the way to approach this card. I don't see much in terms of parlay material personally. That's not my style. Go check out Dog or Pass. Go check out a couple of these other shows where guys are very good at putting together parlays. It's just not me. So I think that there is some interesting notes on this fight card, but I really do encourage you guys, don't trust a fighter just because they're fighting a bad fighter. They're bad too, right? Like you got to make sure that they check your personal boxes, the things that you want to see. Do they have good cardio? Do they have good striking? Do they have good wrestling? Do they have a big social following? Does the UFC want them to win? Whatever boxes you got to check to feel good about your bet, I would do that this week and look for underdogs that fit your criteria, as opposed to getting overinvested in low-level chalk and then kicking yourself when it doesn't come through, or kicking yourself when it goes to a split decision and you have half a heart attack and you have to hedge off. So these are the kind of fights where you don't want to let the UFC schedule dictate your betting habits, right? If they don't give you a lot of high-level fighters to bet at chalk, maybe don't bet chalk that week. But if you see fighters like Volkanovski at minus 300, maybe you take that price, right? Like I'm willing to admit in hindsight that Yair Rodriguez wasn't value, right? But I thought he could be. And I thought that Duplessis was value. That's the insurance policy that you get from betting big underdogs, guys. You could be wrong more often and still win money. And so if you look at my results over time, I win less than 50% of my bets, guys. That's the truth. But I have been betting for more than 3 years, and I have over 130 units of tracked profit betting on MMA because of my willingness to take underdog bets and to be wrong. So that's my biggest encouragement, guys. I stressed this over the weekend. If you guys do not follow me on Twitter at LiamPicksFights, I would encourage you guys to do so, because I try and drop nuggets about sports betting. I try and drop a lot of information. I am accountable for all my bets, my reads, my information, the stuff that I put out. I put it all on Twitter as well. Full transparency, full accountability. But there's a quote I wanted to read from you guys. This is a tweet that I dropped over the weekend. One thing MMA will teach you: if you are scared to be wrong, you can't win. Be willing to risk looking like a fool. When you bet on underdogs, you can be wrong more and still profit. When you lay favorites, you need a strong level of conviction. This sport is volatile and unforgiving. The point that we will close with today is this. Last week in the comments section, and by the way, it's happened many times before. It'll happen many times again. I understand the nature of YouTube comment section, but a lot of times, guys, I get people coming in here and saying, you're an idiot. What a jackass. Can't believe they're betting this. Oh, I can't believe he's on this guy. Never the apology after, right? Never the, wow, I can't believe I was wrong. But I always try and approach it with love and respect, because the truth is, I don't know if I'm going to be right or not, right? But neither do they. But they come in with the arrogance to assume I have to be wrong because I'm picking something that's less predicted, that's less foreseeable, that's harder to imagine. An underdog winning is harder to imagine sometimes. Increase your imagination, guys. Be willing to be wrong and to look like a fool, because the same reasons that I bet on Yair Rodriguez and he didn't look good at all and he lost are the same exact reasons that I bet Dricus Duplessis and he looked like the minus 400 favorite and he won. Fair enough. So when we go ahead and we take big risks on this show, I'm not doing it for shock value. I'm not doing it to be funny. I'm not doing it to, try and be entertaining particularly. I am here always to try and give you guys the God's honest best show that I can, that is true to myself and what I believe and my reads. So if I tell you I think an underdog's live, I think the underdog is live. If I tell you I'm going to bet it, then I'm going to bet it. But if I tell you that I'm thinking about it, if I tell you that I'm considering it, keep in mind, I am going to be open to more information as the week goes on, because I'm not perfect either. I have been swayed by other people's arguments before. And this is why, if my conviction's really strong, it doesn't matter if 50 people tell me that Robert Whittaker is going to win. I don't give a shit. I'm going to bet Duplessis and ride off into the sunset. But on the other hand, if somebody makes one compelling argument for why somebody's going to win, well, I'll take that seriously. So if you guys disagree with me and you guys want to come to the comment section and say, yo, Liam, I disagree with you because I think this is going to happen, I will engage with your argument 100% and I will not take it personally. But if you want to say I'm an effing idiot or can't believe you picked this or whatever, then do expect that you will get exposed on Twitter after the fights if I win. Because the truth is, I have to sit in this chair every week, and I love to do it. It's my honor and my pleasure. But I take the slings and arrows, and I let people say whatever they want, and people will have their jokes and the laughs at my expense. Or they'll come in and they'll say, I'm a jackass, or I'm this and that for victory lapping my wins. Guys, I write about MMA for what I do. I talk about MMA weekly on this channel. I take it very seriously. If it's not clear at this point, I really try and get it right. I also can take myself as a joke. I can have fun. I could laugh. But when it comes down to it, you're making fun of my work, and you're making fun of, or you're saying, in this case, that I don't believe in what I'm saying, or that I'm just saying things for shock value. That's never going to be me. And what you'll find out over time is betting on big underdogs is what I effing do. Let's go back and look at the track record, not at my opinions, not at nothing like that. We're going to bring up on the screen here, sharing screen, and we'll go right here. We'll share this. So I hope that y'all can see this okay on the screen, all right? This is my tracked betting third-party record at betmma.tips, okay? And I'm going to highlight for you right here at the bottom of the screen. It's the big underdog tab, okay? I have made 148 picks. 27% of my total moneyline bets that I've ever tracked on betmma.tips were big underdogs, plus 185 and higher. I am correct on those 34% of the time. I am profiting 61.31 units for a 35% ROI on big underdogs. So when I tell you that I believe in an underdog, it's not to blow smoke up your ass, and it's not just to be silly. It's me trying to give you guys my honest opinion. So as far as I'm concerned, guys, Bets and Banter is the sharp show that I do every week, trying to bring you guys the best angles, trying to bring you guys sharp handicappers every week to break down this stuff with me. So you guys get multiple perspectives. So you realize sharps disagree. Sharps take different bets on different fights, right? Sharps don't always see it the same way. But what a sharp will do is think about things in a unique way, try and approach it by finding their own angles, try and pick their spots on these cards, and not try and be Nostradamus and pick every single fight perfect. I have to do that for work, right? I have to pick every fight. I have to say who's going to win and why. But that is not all of betting, right? If it was that simple, if it was just picking who's going to win and why, well, then we'd all be rich, right? So what I do is I pick who's going to win and why for every single fight. That's my job. And then I try and give really sound betting advice in addition to that. So I truly believe in the work that I do. I think that there's very few people that do the analysis that I do. That's a personal opinion. I've shared many. Dan Tom is somebody I love. Jack Slack. I read tons of great analysis out there as well. Luke Thomas, among some of the more prominent names, among some of the names in the space. My guy Gordo Gambles. I do content with so many brilliant people week in and week out, right? And you guys know many of those names. I won't say them all, but you guys get my point. Including my guy Jewish Better, frequent guest of the show, absolutely crushed it. Comeback week last week for the kid. What we should be keeping in the back of our mind always, guys, is this. It's a game of runs. Sometimes you'll be up, sometimes you'll be down. So what you need to do is stop loss. You need to make sure that when I'm on a bad run, I don't lose too much. And when I'm on a good run, I don't get too confident and over my skis that I lose what I've just made, what I've worked so hard to get. Never let your highs get you too high. Never let your lows get you too low. That's what my college wrestling coach told me. I will never forget it. It will stick with me always, because that's what you need to win in this game. When you get 3 bets right in a row and everybody's telling you, oh, you're so smart, you're a genius, you're Nostradamus, it's the same people that will come back to you. You're a fool. You're an idiot when you get it wrong. And I'll tell you what, I've had reverse sweeps. I've lost 20 units in a night. I've won 20 units in a night. You can't change, you can't really surprise me anymore. I've done it all in this space. I've had my heart broken. I've lost matches that I really put in time, effort, energy for. What are you going to do to me that hasn't, I've had it all broken before, right? So every week, start at 0. Every week, I come back to the table. We're on a 3-event run. That doesn't matter. The bookie is never going to pay me for the work that I did last week. So this week, we have a fresh set of opportunities, right? We take a fresh look at this new card, and now we give it our best go. We know going in that we don't need to get overextended. There's more fights next week. So the UFC is a machine that keeps rolling on. They're going to keep giving us more fights to bet on. So pick the ones that you have an edge. Don't pick the ones where the bookmaker has an edge. The bookmaker, what is their advantage? They've got the VIG. They've got, inside information. They've got access to the best world-class analytics. They've got access to more math and more proprietary software. They've got access to more stats. They have 10 advantages, right? What is one of our advantages as a player? They have to hang a line on every fight. We don't have to bet every fight, ladies and gentlemen. We have to bet only the fights that we choose. So pick your spots accordingly and get them where they're soft. Get them where they are weak. Have multiple books if you can. Access multiple books and play them against one another. They're not your friend. They don't want to see you win. You want to see them crushed. So crush them by playing them against one another and do your job to shop for the best prices. Figure out what side you're on, if you want to bet it, how much you want to bet it, what your edge is. If you guys do that, you put yourself in a great position to win. So if you guys have any questions, fire them off now. I appreciate everybody that's still rocking with us. Appreciate that y'all put up with that little diatribe at the end. But the truth is, I'm the one sitting in this chair, and I appreciate so many of the kind people that comment, and I always make sure that I show love, and I shout you guys out by name, and I try and get those personal interactions and relationship. But also, if you guys want to come in with the troll and the whatever, it's just going to get reciprocated on the other end. So appreciate everybody for it. But we saw a couple people get lit up over the weekend for mocking the panel. The unanimous panel was pretty goddamn sharp on that Duplessis call. So I appreciate everybody that showed love and support. Shout out to our guy, SD Crusader says, damn, 47% for parlays is impressive. I am so bad at parlays, my man, but I actually keep them to a very, very small percentage of my portfolio. When I do bet them, I've done okay, but I really try and keep them very small percentage of what I do overall. So it could bias my numbers there. Shout out to Kristen, says, Liam, you're genuinely an awesome guy with a brilliant mind. Very, very kind of you. Thanks for the hard works and the sharp takes. It is my pleasure to be here. It's my pleasure to talk through these fights. And absolutely sharp call on Dan Hooker for you last week. Knew that you were onto something there. So shout out to you. Like the book says from Nick Alexander, win or learn. The losses help you refine your game. Absolutely. Speaking of great analysts, right? We got the notorious Jack Slack book right here. 2 books on Conor McGregor. If you guys want to know the full history of Conor McGregor, 2 great resources to pick up. This one will tell you everything you need to know from a fight standpoint, how he advanced on his career. But then this one will tell you a little bit more about the man. It'll tell you about John Kavanaugh and how he came up in martial arts and how he was bullied when he was young. A lot of really interesting, great content in here as well. So for me, I love these books. They're a journey into the mind of the fighters that we talk about on the show. And also, though, guys, I always talk about what you could do that gives you an edge, a unique edge, right? And for me, this book and Fightnomics and a bunch of other things that I do, I used to invest in advanced analytics before a lot of people did that. And I would buy stats packages that the UFC stats website didn't have, because I know that the books do things like that as well, proprietary information. So the things that you could do to give yourself an edge. I have this huge Rolodex of tape. That's a unique edge for me. Not everybody has it, but that's okay. You can find your edge. I come from a grappling background. I do really well betting on submission props. That's okay. If you come from a striking background, maybe you hit KO props at a higher rate. So for me, this game is so individualized. It's so contextual. I know people that just bet favorites and they do great. I know people that bet on overs and unders and they crush. To each their own. Find your way. Find your path to profit. My friends, never think that because I play underdogs and because I play props, that are plus 1,000 and things like that, that's the way you have to play it. But what you have to do is have a plan. If you have a plan and if you have a process, then you can look at your results, you can evaluate them, and you can decide whether you're doing well or you're doing poorly and you want to keep going. So it's very straightforward if you make it a replicable process that you could do each and every week. So shout out to you guys that are still rocking with us. Our guy 28 AV says, you're a savage, G. T-Rex comeback season, or what's your prediction? Anything sticking out from a betting perspective? My read on that fight, man, is the under. I feel like the under there would be my top read. Sadykhov is a guy that, he did go into the, you've never heard of Fightnomics, my friend. So I don't actually have my copy up here. I actually don't know what happened to it. I read and annotated the whole freaking book. It's probably around here somewhere. I wish I could show you guys. The studio is not set up with lighting to show you, but basically imagine if we turned the camera facing this way. I have a shelf with about, hundreds more books sitting all on it. So for me, Fightnomics is a really essential book. If you guys haven't heard of him, there's a gentleman named Reed Kuhn. I believe he works for ESPN Analytics now. I know that he writes for VSIN at times as well. He's a betting analyst in part, but he's also a data guy, very smart data guy. And Fightnomics was a statistical based approach to understanding patterns about MMA, things like size advantage, things like home field advantage, and these kind of things in MMA. Fascinating book, guys. Really, really essential information for MMA. If you guys have ever heard me talk about fighters over 38 years of age are so much more likely to get knocked out, that is straight from Fightnomics. So yeah, without mushing the book sales of that anymore, I think Fightnomics is a really, really good book if you guys want to read. There's very few specific resources out there about betting on fights, right? That's a very niche market. That's why you guys, I think, come to this show in part because we talk about betting on fights at a really high level, in my view. We try and take it seriously and treat you guys like adults, like grown-ups, and have a very adult conversation about it. Fightnomics is a grown-up talk about, understanding MMA. So very, very good book and very, very worth watching. Reed Kuhn. Yep, absolutely. From the Jewish Bettor. So guys, any other questions that you guys have, go ahead and fire them off because we'll be wrapping this up in the next 2 or 3 minutes here. Our guy Matt W says Norma Dumont is going to smash Chandler. She's leveling up for real. Shout out to you, brother. She got a lot of fights in the UFC, so maybe she figures it out this time. Our guy Mr. D says, facts, Liam, there's more than one way. There is always more than one way to make money in this game. So truthfully, guys, for example, if you look at that fight with Whitaker and Duplessis, if you bet the under, you cashed and it looked really sharp. If you bet Duplessis, it cashed and it looked really sharp. So there was great ways to bet that fight, multiple ways. If you bet Volk, it was very sharp. If you bet the fight not to go to decision, it was very sharp. Like there was just a bunch of great ways to target the fights. It's not all as simple as this is the side. Sometimes you have to be more thoughtful and you have to think about how you can approach it. Damn, did we move the market on the show here, Furia? Did we talk too much and start crushing it? But absolutely, absolutely. So great stuff, guys. Tyler hits the nail on the head. He says, great first look. Get some sleep, brother. It's late out there. No doubt about it. So, guys, we have a tight 90 minutes here on the first look. Going to be getting back to work for later this week. So stay tuned for announcements at LiamPicksFights. If you guys want to check out the audio replay, if you ever want to show some love and support, one of the easiest ways to do it is to get subscribed on podcast platforms. That's Apple Podcasts. That's Spotify. Drop a review if you have the time, if you have the inclination. Really helps me out to grow, to help other people find the show. Also, guys, same principles apply to dropping a like on YouTube, getting subscribed to the show. Very easy, free ways to support. I take a lot of time out of my day, my week, my life to do this, and I love to do it. But I also appreciate the support along the way. It really helps me. And I like to take this content to as many people as possible. There's always room for some more people in the sharpest chat in the game. We could always mix it up with some more perspectives and opinions. So thank you guys to everybody who participates. Thank you for making the show what it is. Thank you for being a part of the sharpest chat in the game, and bring somebody along, get somebody else in here. Let's keep making it, one of the highest priority places to be in the space, because I think there's nowhere doing it better right now. So thank you to everybody that takes part. Thank you to everybody for the support. God bless you all. I hope that you enjoyed the fights at UFC 290. It was an absolute blast. It was a fun night for me. It was a blast doing content last week as well. So many great people involved. My guy Gordo, Wiz, Lou Betcha, Lucrative, Jewish Bettor, and all the guys from Pub Sports Radio. So many more. Had a blast doing content last week. Been on a great run, great rhythm, and we're just keeping the ball rolling. So as we get deeper into 2023, let's keep on trying to run the stats in the right direction. Last thing we'll leave you guys with is the up-to-date recap. Let you guys know where we're at year-to-date on our results. So year-to-date, guys, plus 7.6 units on 66 units of total risk for an 11% ROI. and it's slow and steady. That's the name of the game for me right now. Slow and steady, winning the race, not getting out over our skis, but continuous stacking of profit and trying to get that ROI as high as we possibly can. Last year, we finished 99 units up at a 12% ROI. Very good stuff, hard to reach again. But this year, on a fraction of the volume, we produced just under the same ROI at 11%. So for me, very happy with those results, but it's always right back to work. So between now and Thursday, going to get a lot of research done. Hope that you guys will subscribe to the show and come back then, because we're going to have a lot more fun on Thursday for bets and banter. So God bless and take care, guys.